Good morning, everybody. At our webinar concerning the rules for suspension and restoration of the market activities. As this is an online event, not physical meeting, we will need to stick to some rules to make the meeting smooth. So I would like to ask Gonzalo to present these rules for us. Gonzalo, could you present these rules?
Yes, good morning to all. First of all, thank you for having participating in this webinar. I think we are expected to be around 23 participants. So far I can see only 13, so probably 10 more to come. So as Premet says, yes, we have some rules, and just to make this interaction and presentation of this preliminary work done by TSOs on these market rules for suspension. We also help with the tools and features of this GoToWebinar. By default, you as a participant, you will be muted by default, and then every time you like to ask any question orally, you may have raised your hand. You will see this icon in the panel you see on this tool. You will see a small hand. Anytime you click on that, there will be an arrow that goes up and turn to green, and you may, every time you finish your question, raise down your hand so that you still go unmute to unmute mode. These times for these questions will be set by Premet and identify along the presentation. So he will provide you when these times will be able for you to raise those questions. And yeah, that's all. I would like to know if any of you, I cannot see any phone number, but in case you are connected through a phone number, I would like to know, because this will probably be more particular for me to manage this dynamic of the work. But please let me know through the chat or answer to the questions, and I would like to register also to me. And that's all. I leave the floor back to Premet, and hope that you will enjoy and learn quite a few from this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gonzalo, for all your work in organizing this webinar. As I said, this webinar is about the rules for the suspension and restoration of the market activities and the report on the harmonization that ENTSO-E has to deliver by end of this year. First, I will introduce the topic, the legal basis, and what market activities were identified by the ENTSO-E so far. Later on, I will go about the report, the legal basis, the process that we will follow to deliver this report, and the next step, which is the survey that will be filled by all TSOs. I need to say that what we are presenting here is based on the current knowledge. There are many submissions that are not approved yet, so there could be some changes due to in some countries. There is also significant number of the rules that were submitted some time ago. However, they were not approved. There was no request for amendment from the relevant NRAs, so it seems like also NRAs have the problems with this work. So what we present here is our current knowledge. Okay, let's go to the rules for the suspension of the market activities. This topic is governed by the Chapter 4, Market Interactions of Network Code on the Emergence and Restoration. The paragraph 1 of Article 35 says that in some cases, TSO may temporarily suspend one or more activities. And these cases are the transmission system is in the blackout state. Second, the transmission system is in the emergency state. The TSO exhausted all options provided by the market, and continuation of market activities would deteriorate some parameters defined in the system operations guideline. The third case is when continuation of market activities would significantly hamper the restoration process. And the fourth case is the case when tools and communication means necessary for supporting the market activities are not available. The paragraph 2 provides some list of activities that can be suspended. First, it is provision of cross-zonal capacity for relevant allocation process. The second activity is submission by balancing service provider of balancing capacity bits and balancing energy bits. The third activity is provision of balanced position at the end of the day-ahead time frame by balance responsible party if it is required by terms and conditions for balancing. The fourth activity is provision of modification of position by balance responsible parties. The fifth activity is provision of schedules listed in the Article 111 of System Operations Guideline. And there is also a point saying that it is possible to suspend other relevant market activities. We need, in order to use this possibility, the TSOs need to develop the rules for suspension of and restoration of market activities. The deadline for the initial submission to the relevant NRA of these rules was at the end of 2018. It can be amended if necessary. When we suspend the market activity, it is possible to change the settlement rules of balancing capacity, balancing energy, and the imbalance settlement rules when it is necessary. It is also possible to keep the rules that are used in the normal operation. So let's go to the actual work. In this webinar, we won't discuss the rules of the specific country. We will discuss what is the common for the majority of the TSOs. If necessary, we will discuss what are the differences. I need to emphasize that there is no clear border between TSO's intervention within the market rules and the suspension. We have it is possible to do similar actions in some cases based on the market regulation or due to application of suspension of market activity. And what we found out when we looked at few examples, the real understanding of the rules for suspending of market activities is not possible without knowing the relevant national grid codes, national methodologies, in particular terms and conditions for balancing. Okay, so the basic question is, what is the market activity that can be suspended? First, we have the list in the paragraph 2 of Article 35, which we already presented, which can be extended by these national rules that are developed by the TSOs. And when we did some check within the TSOs, we found the following additional activities that are included in the rules. First, we have single day-ahead coupling. Second, we have single intraday coupling. Third, we have the submission of integrated scheduling process bits. Fifth, is the activity of cooperation with balancing platforms. And the sixth activity that we identified is application of all standard procedures. Later on, I will describe what these market activities mean. The second important question is, are all market activities suspended? And the answer is no. We suspend only the necessary market activities, depending on the situation, whether this system state is in the blackout state and we are starting the restoration process, or the system is split and we are not able to apply the regular balancing processes, so on. It is to be defined at the national rules for suspension and restoration of market activities. So let's go to the first activity, which is the provision of cross-zonal capacity. This capacity is performed both in the wholesale market and in the balancing market. In the wholesale market, we can provide the capacity to implicit auction. Basically, the single day-ahead coupling and single intraday coupling. Currently, this is the continuous trading. In the future, it will also be the intraday auctions. We have also the provision of cross-zonal capacity to explicit auctions. First, as the long-term transmission right auctions. We have also on some borders explicit access in the continuous trading, and we still on some border have the transitional arrangements concerning the explicit allocation. Still we implement the target solution, so we have explicit auctions in the day ahead and intraday on some borders, but they are being phased out. We also provide the cross-zonal capacity within the balancing market, whether it is for the balancing energy, which is done after intraday cross-zonal gate closure, which is 1 hour before start of the delivery period. And we have also 3 methodologies for provision for procurement of the balancing capacity. When it comes to the provision of cross-zonal capacity in the wholesale market, this activity is performed by the TSOs or coordinated capacity calculator on behalf of the TSOs. This capacity is provided towards the NEMO in case of implicit auctions or given to the market participants in form of the transmission rights in case of the explicit auctions. When we suspend this activity, it has the equivalent or equivalent in most of the cases of 2 possibilities already in the market regulation. It could be curtailment of allocated capacity if this capacity was already allocated, or it could be reduction of the capacity that was not yet allocated, and we already have the rules governing such events, and when we check the relevant articles of the NCR, primarily the paragraph 3A of Article 36 of the NCR and paragraph 3 of Article 39, we as a TSOs should treat the market participants the same way, whether we do that within the market whether we do this according to market regulations or according to the suspension of the market activities. We have a very broad topic of processes due to electricity balancing guideline. these processes are performed by the different actors, TSOs, balance responsible parties, balance service providers, in some cases also by third-party market operators. The balancing guideline and respective proposals, the terms, conditions, and methodologies define some requirements for performing these processes, the submission of balancing capacity, balancing energy bits, activation of these bits, coordination between TSOs using the European platforms, as well as imbalance settlement if balance responsible parties are not balanced. If we suspend some of the activities, it leads to it has the consequences that maybe the balancing capacity is not procured by the market-based mechanism, but some other fallback, for example, on the instructions of the TSO. The activation of balancing energy bits may be done differently than defined in the regular rules. The BRPs may be no longer required to be balanced. It's also possible that participation in the balancing platform is suspended. And if we suspend some balancing market activities, we may as well change the settlement rules accordingly. And what happens if if some activity is suspended? It depends on the rules defined by the relevant TSO. Okay, when we suspend activation rules for balancing energy bits, the TSOs change the balancing bits activation, which could be pro rata or merit order based activation, and the balancing bits will be activated according to these fallback rules that are defined. Okay, when it comes to the provision of the schedules defined in the Article 111 of SOGL, we have 4 types of the schedules. External commercial trade schedules, internal commercial trade schedules, consumption schedules, and generation schedules. There is coherent application of external commercial schedules by the TSO. These are the schedules that are nominated due to cross-border energy exchanges. So they are pretty well standardized. And what happens if this activity is suspended? It could be curtailment of allocated capacities. if and generally the consequences are already defined in the relevant regulation. FCA guideline, CACM guideline, harmonized auction rules. It could be also the suspension of nomination of PTR, physical transmission rights, where it is relevant, and the consequences, if this happens, are defined in the rules for the nomination of physical transmission rights. We have also other types of the schedules, and the treatment of these schedules is less harmonized. And what happens if these activities are suspended? The TSO follows the respective action plan, which is defined in the national methodologies. It could be different in different TSO. It could be the local grid code. It could be terms and conditions for balancing. Okay. Those were the activities defined in the network code on emergency and restoration. Now we go into the activities that are beyond this, that are under this point F, other relevant. The first activity is single day ahead coupling. It is defined in the article, in paragraph 26 of Article 2 of CACM guideline. It is the auctioning process when the where collected orders are matched along with the cross-zonal capacity in the day ahead market time frame. What happens if this activity is suspended in given bidding zone? First, the cross-zonal capacity of this bidding zone on borders is no longer allocated. The bids in this bidding zone border are no longer matched. So there is no internal trade by the organized by the NIMOS, and the market price is not calculated for this bidding zone in this market time units. The second activity is single intraday coupling, which is defined in the next paragraph of CACM. And this is continuous process for matching the collected orders along with the cross-zonal capacity. And this activity is performed in the intraday market time frame. And if we suspend this activity, then the in given bidding zone, then cross-zonal capacity is no longer allocated on the borders of this bidding zone, and the bids within this bidding zone are no longer matched. So once again, there is no internal trading. The next activity is the application of all standard procedures. This activity is performed by the TSO, and suspending this activity basically means that TSO takes the direct control, and TSO operates the system according to the current system state, taking into account available information and the available communication means. Not this, the system operation is not necessarily performed according to the terms and conditions for balancing or other rules for the normal system operations. So it will be the time for our first Q&A session.
Yeah, I have questions from Michael, and I will give you the floor after reading, or I will just give you the floor to either you can speak up, present your two questions I received from my screen. I'm not sure if I could able give you the. Yeah. Okay, now you can speak, Michael. Please.
Do you hear me? Do you
yes,
hear me?
Yes.
Perfectly.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I had, I understand the comment you make on suspension, but my question is mostly how do you restore in case you have multiple bidding zones that are involved, for example, with a blackout? Because there you need harmonization. Even if with suspension, each bidding zone follows a different order, that's less an issue. But if you want to restore a system, everybody needs to be on the same page. So how will you treat, how do you treat that? And my second question is on the settlement rules. On one of your slides, you said the settlement rules for balancing might be suspended. But what will be applied then? I understand that for activation of balancing bids, you follow a procedure, but by suspending settlement rules, which I can understand that sometimes it's needed, but what will you use? Because in the end, you need a settlement somehow.
Okay, I will start with the second question. How to settle the market in case of the suspension of some market activities. There is second submission companion to the rules for the suspension. It is the rules for the settlement of the balancing energy, balancing capacity, and imbalance settlement in case of the suspension of market activities, and it is defined there. And you need to check within your TSOs what is in this submission. This is the second question. The first question was about the coordination between the TSOs.
The first question was how do you restore? So suspending you can do at a different speed and in a different order. But if you have multiple bidding zones, how do you do a restoration? Because there you will need to have indeed some coordination.
Yes, you need some coordination, and it will need to be decided on the case-by-case basis.
So yes. TSOs, so the TSOs then between them see how they can handle it. So there's no rule book. It's on a case-by-case basis.
You have the general rules in the submission, However, it's not possible to foresee all possibilities. So we will need to act according to the rules that were submitted. However, the application will require additional coordination between the TSOs.
I understand, and I even agree, because you cannot cover every situation. However, I think it is needed that you have a limited set of options that you can use, because otherwise market parties will also not be able to comply. You know, if we get something completely new that we never heard about, we will not be able to react to signals or send you schedules or whatever according to what you want. So I understand that we need to be flexible. But from our side, it's a little bit also a question, give us at least an idea of what the different options might be, because we also will need to cover this somehow.
Yes, and this is, it needs to be tackled by the rules.
Yeah.
It is, we don't have the general overview of all the rules in the European Union. However, as I see, there are requirements for the proper lead time to restore, for the communication with the market participants, and this is tackled there.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Just now giving the floor to Yannick, who was also asking me some questions. So please, Yannick from Electric, the floor, I guess, if I manage, is yours. I'm trying to give you the. No. Can you hear me, Yannick? Yeah, I know. I see, Paul, that also you have your Rise and also Ricard. I'm trying to unmute Yannick, but it seems that he's not connected well. Yannick, can you hear us? Well, in the meantime, Yannick tries that. I will try with Ricard. So the floor is yours, Ricard.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I actually have quite a few questions, but I'll stick to one first here. When it's discussed, or you're saying that suspension of single intraday coupling for the relevant country and potentially the borders, I still don't understand if it is a suspension of already delivered, meaning we stand, I usually use examples. If we at 10:30 in the morning, it is called a suspension. Is it called a suspension for that delivery hour or period that we're standing in now, and presumably a few periods forward in time, based on some estimate of when the situation will be recovered with some confidence, which presumably will take 3, 4, 5, 6 hours at the most normally. Is it then the activities that have been performed and delivered already that is to be suspended, or is the suspension also extending to, for example, single day coupling calculation for the following day, when obviously at 10:30 in the morning today, the implications for tomorrow is normally pretty much zero. So question is, what is suspended? Is there a common rule for that? Because it has enormous impact. Of course, there's enormous impact on suspending something right here and now because positions are there, so that will be a tricky one in itself. But to also extend it to say that even activities that are way further back in time are also to be suspended also has enormous impact. And on the latter, it seems like it is questionable if it's valid because of the obvious thing that the recovery of the system should happen within X number of hours. Yeah.
Okay.
Question, but what activities are suspended? Is there a common rule for that you have been able to define?
Okay. First, I will address your comment that the 6 hours to restore. It is optimistic assessment. Thankfully, we haven't had many blackouts in the continental Europe. I don't remember what was the time to restore of the Italy in 2003, but hello. But I'm not sure, but I remember something about 12 hours, and it was just Italy. It was possible to support from the neighboring countries. When we look at the system restoration of the blackouts in the last years in the United States and the Australia, it was not hours, it was rather the days. So this is it's something that I needed to mention. I don't remember what was the year that there was a blackout in Sweden, and it was restored, I think, in the range you provided for 6 hours. However, we need to take into account that the Nordic is a bit specific region. Basically, majority of the generation has the black start capability, is much more flexible than the other. So in case of the blackout concerning wider area in the continental Europe, the restoration time could be much longer. And when we get back to your example, what would mean the suspension of single day ahead coupling? Unless there are some specific approaches for some TSO, it would mean that single day ahead coupling won't be performed for the following day, as if we suspend it, if the TSO suspended at 10 or 11. Basically, if we are not able to restore the system in time, then the results of the day ahead market coupling won't be feasible, and it is also possible that they would distort results for the other areas. For example, there will be export of the energy from the blackout countries. So the matching will be done using these debits from the blackout area, but in real time, this energy won't be available. If we suspend the the market activities, whether it is the reduce the cross-zonal capacity or suspend the single day ahead coupling, then in the day ahead, the generators in the rest of the area will get the clear signal that their generation is needed. So it may be it will be necessary. When it comes to the results of already performed single day ahead coupling, we will need to somehow deal with the results already provided. However, it will be rather under the topic of this submission of the relevant schedules, internal commercial trade schedules and the external commercial trade schedules. There could be some differences in some of the submissions, but generally the suspension will have an effect on the following auctions.
Okay, so I shouldn't take up more, but I just I didn't quite understand. Are you saying that the schedules for today, for the single day coupling, I mean, I'll take my example again. 10:30 in the morning, some TSO in some country calls for cancellation because of blackout or some other extreme emergency. Does that mean that the schedules, the nomination, the schedules have been done for day ahead for that particular country and its borders is suspended for the remainder of that day? Because that was actually calculated yesterday, yeah? Is that suspended? And likewise, all the trades that have been made in the intraday markets in and linked to that country, are those cancelled? And then, of course, comes my follow-up question: who will bear the economic responsibility for that? Because, well, I think there is an obvious answer on my side, but I'm not sure if the same for the TSOs. But if something is suspended and the market and the parties affected have no ability to adjust it, then of course they cannot be the ones taking the brunt of the effect.
Okay, the suspension happened at 10:30 of day D. The day ahead results were calculated on D-1, and these results are not changed because it was already submitted, taken into the into account. So the suspension of single day ahead coupling doesn't change what was already provided. The treatment of the situation that we can no longer operate according to these schedules will be according to some other rules. So it would be the suspension of provision of the schedules. And when it comes to the economic responsibility, in such situation, it is defined in the CECM regulation, and okay, it is defined for the external commercial trade schedules. Let me remember what are the rules. I remember that the shipping agents are not shipping agents and central counterparties are not punished. CECM. Okay. For the external schedules, it is defined in the CACM. In case it was after it happened after the and it was for the implicit allocation, central counterparties or shipping agents shall not be subject to financial damage or financial benefit arising from imbalance created by the curtailment. In case the event was force majeure and the capacity was allocated via explicit auction, the remuneration is according to the initial price. In case of emergency situation and allocation via explicit auction, it is a market spread between the relevant bidding zones. When it comes to the situation when there is no market spread, for example, the price was not calculated in one or two bidding zones, and it was emergency situation, and capacity was allocated via explicit auction, it is according to the initial price paid. For the rest of the schedules, the consumption schedules, generation schedules, and the internal commercial trade schedules, the rules for the settlement in case of the market suspension will be applied.
Thanks for that. I think then actually this is a bit reassuring if that is the basis by which, not that I have any particular liking of suspensions of markets by any means, but it does seem like, given Mankakim, then shipping agents and those scheduling, and that is indirectly the NEMOs, would not be subject to any consequences. From that, I also it seems like then the balancing schedules made between the NEMO shipper, NEMO and its members in the country would not be affected either. If I read it, because if you're not exposed to financial risk on the one hand, or to TSOs, you're not having to expose it to others either. But to be seen. The only thing that I saw in that paragraphs below where you just looked at, it also had a clear reference to that the TSO's concern when they make a force majeure should limit it in scope, both,
yes,
I think geographically and time, and I think that, but I think that then is one of the main question marks I have for the notion that even an event happening in the morning of one day should really have to have an effect on the day-ahead coupling for the following day, given that, okay, you can give some examples of some very lengthy, but historically cases in many countries that are exemplified over the world is most cases have been pretty much restoring the control zone and the main grid within a time span between 3 hours and 10. And again, in the morning, you're still up to 40 hours before delivery of the last day-ahead coupling hour or period for the next day. So I think there's still something to be said about the idea that you would suspend the following day. even if you're standing in the morning. But I'll stop there. Please go forward. I shouldn't take up all the time.
Thank you, Ricard. Just before giving you the floor was Yannick, so please bear with me, Paul, because Yannick was before you. So I will give the floor to Yannick. I guess now it should work. Hi, Yannick. Hello? Well, it seems that it's not working with him today. Hello, Yannick. I think you are self-muted, so you have to unmute yourself because I already give you the. You are able not to speak from my side, so you have to unmute yourself. You will see the mic icon in your dashboard, so you should press it and unmute.
Ah, okay.
Hello?
Here it is. Can you hear me?
Good. Yes.
Woo!
Here.
Thank you. Sorry.
No worries.
So thank you, because I think Ricardo already covered most of my points, and I think indeed I was very much concerned by this possibility to say, because I have a blackout or a critical situation now, I could cancel things for tomorrow. And so my question would be about the scale of this blackout, when it's concerns only like a specific region of a control area, for example, a city of a country, the blackout, but not the whole country. Is it still considered as a case for market suspension? That would be my first question. And second, and also linked to the question by Ricardo, when you say that capacities that are already allocated could be cancelled, how do you see it? I guess it's capacities for cross-border exchanges that have been nominated. So how would it happen? Is it purely a TSO perspective, or are there any direct implications for the market parties who were involved?
I'm sorry, I lost the connection. I'm back. I didn't get all what Ricardo said. Could you repeat?
No, it was Yannick from Electric. Just a summary, and please compliment Yannick if I missed something. You are mainly asking about the scale of the blackouts, and also how about other models than TSO in these scenarios. That were your main two questions, I understood.
Yes, in particular about the blackout, or about the critical case when it applies only to, let's say, part of a control area for a TSO. Let's say a specific city and not the whole country. Is it still considered as a case for market suspension or not?
Okay, when it comes to the TSO settlement, it is beyond the market activities. These are the TSO activities related to the market activities that can be suspended as well. And it is regulated in the system operation agreements, at least for PSC. I think it is for the rest of the TSO as well. And the situation when it was not possible, when the schedules need to be changed, it is on one side regulated by the system operations agreements. It is also part partially tackled by some of the methodologies how to settle between the TSOs the unintended power exchanges. Primarily, it is regulated in the system operations agreements.
Okay, I got your point. And about the local blackout, whether it's a condition for market suspension, what would be your views, and how do you need to address?
Okay, the settlement in case of local blackout.
No, just the market suspension, whether it's a case for market suspension or not, or it's only blackout at a control area scale or large scale.
Okay. The blackout is defined in the system operations guideline. It is defined on the control area as the loss of 50% of demand or more, or losing voltage in whole system for more than 3 minutes. So this is tackled by the in blackout state. It is tackled by in the regulation. It is a big incident, a very big incident on the control area level of when it comes to the extending for the lower, for the smaller incidents, then we go into the case of it is the emergency state when all options all options provided by market are exhausted and continuation would deteriorate, and the assessment of the parameters that should be checked is subject to the local NRA's discretion. So the TSO has to somehow define that in the terms and in the rules for suspension and restoration of market activities.
Okay, that clarifies my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Yannick. I just now give the floor to Paul, who was also waiting for this. So, Paul, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay,
yes.
Super, thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot, Paul Kiesbers from Statkraft, but also I've been active in EFET also on this topic in some MESC meetings in the past. I would like to make 3 remarks, questions. And before doing that, just to quickly say that these emergency situations and blackout situations are crucial, and that TSOs need to have the proper means to avoid a blackout, to reduce a brownout, and as good as possible. There's no doubt about that, and that should not be at stake. The concerns that we always have shared is that if the rules are imprecise or not good enough, there could be undesirable impacts on the market, and that is something we should try to avoid. That is at least our aim. So that's the background. Then the 3 remarks. First, why suspension of a certain market activity? I really would like to see in this report that you try to describe for any market activity that could be suspended, the why. What is the aim of suspending a certain activity? Why would it help to improve the situation, to improve system security? So far, I've never seen explanations or justifications on that. And I think it's crucial, it's very important, because generally market activities support or help system security. So a suspension of any market activity clearly has a risk that the things might deteriorate instead of improve. So I really hope that on these slides where you describe the different market activities and where you also say what could happen, that there is also a box on why, what is the trigger? That was the previous question also a little bit from Yannick. What is the trigger and why would then this suspension actually help? Then the second point, it's on this implementation at national level. In the beginning, you say something that you can actually not understand the national implementation without knowing the detailed rules and at the national level. And I'm a little bit puzzled what that means. I understand it, but I'm really puzzled why are you saying this? Because for us, this is actually key. We see that there is a risk of very different approaches. And in the end, there is only one market, which is the single European market. And if you have very different approaches, do they really work well together? That is a big question. And I hope that the report that you're going to write sheds some light on this and tries to analyze whether this can create problems, because only then the report will be valuable. Because I think the aim of the report is not just to have some kind of an overview, but the aim of the report, I hope, should be that we can draw lessons and we can then take measures to improve the rules for emergency and restoration. One example, as far as I'm informed, countries like the Netherlands and I think also Sweden, Rickard, correct me if I'm wrong, they have proposed no rules for market suspension to the regulator. They see those TSOs apparently see no reason whatsoever, whenever, to suspend any market activity in times of emergency. Let me underline this. No? In case of a blackout and in case of restoration after a blackout, that is extremely important. But for me, it's obvious then many market activities do not take place. So I'm not focusing on that one. I'm focusing on the emergency situations. So the fact that some countries, some TSOs apparently see no need at all, and other countries, however, do see a need and do have national rules, this is already, for me, alarming. For example, you have been speaking about cancellation, suspension of single intraday market coupling. For me, it's I'm really puzzled. And also, if one TSO in the Netherlands says, well, in case of emergency, we will never suspend the single day-ahead market coupling. However, another TSO in another country will do so. Of course, at the same time, the Netherlands will be heavily affected. So this different implementation in national rules is affecting all other countries. So I really hope that in your report you dive into these aspects of national implementation, try to find the problems related to that, and that you will not say, it's so difficult to understand what's happening at the national level because of different national rules, therefore we leave it. That I hope should not happen. And then, sorry for the long intervention, the third and last remark is about sometimes you write that this activity, suspension of this activity has the same effect as an intervention, like curtailment or something. And then you continue. For me, that's very interesting, but my conclusion then is different, because for me it shows that apparently the problem, the trigger, or the problem that you want to solve can be fully covered by this intervention. So the curtailment of something, for example, which means that there should be no need for suspension of that activity. So I think you should not conclude that the suspension of the activity should have the same whatever rules or something. I think the conclusion should be, in such a case, market suspension of the activity makes no sense, because there is another activity possible, which is the intervention that you talked about. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your remarks. I will start from the last one. You are right. If we have one intervention that could be performed as intervention within the market rules or as suspension, it should be performed as the intervention within the market rules. However, if we need to do several interventions, and the interventions that are that can be done within the market rules solve some part of the problem, for example 20%, but the rest of the needs suspension of the market activities, then trying to do both paths, that part of the interventions are according to the market rules, the rest are according to the suspension, could lead to the longer, would take more time. So so it is, if this is the only intervention, then we should use this market path. However, if we are in, for example, in the blackout state and the time is of essence, then it will be better to do all the interventions in the more efficient way. However, we should, what is relevant is that we should keep the consequences for the market participant consistent. So this is for the last remark. For the second remark, that you are alarmed by the differences on the national level. Okay, I will switch from the suspension of market activities into the fallback procedures. Currently, we have the harmonized rules for the single day-ahead coupling, single intraday coupling. However, when we look at the fallback procedures for the single day-ahead coupling, we will see that we have a different approaches when it comes to the fallback procedures. Basically, we have, I'm aware of 3 different approaches for the fallback procedure. There is the Nordic approach with regional coupling, and in case of no results till 8 p.m., it is taking the results from the similar day. For most other borders, it is the application of shadow auctions. And there is also the fallback in form of postponement of capacity allocation to intraday. We have, and in this situation, we have harmonized market rules. We still have the same system conditions. However, we have different approaches due to the different conditions. Basically, in the Nordic, you have quite a lot of small bidding zones, and you need to be able to do the allocation. And this approach provides the efficient allocation. However, there is a risk that some of the market participants, it will be out of the money. For example, if we have some wind generator, then for him, the result from similar day is not something that he can guarantee that he will be able to do, because the wind generation changes day by day. However, in the Nordic, the most of the generation is the hydro, which is able to perform. In case of the core, where we have the bigger bidding zones that usually are able to self-supply, there is more emphasis not to have such paradoxes, that we have participants that did not submit such bid, but he was accepted for that. So it led to the different fallback. And this is about the wholesale market. When we look at the balancing market, they are not as much harmonized. They are there is some harmonization, but there are much more differences between them. There are also different system conditions. For example, you are in the Nordic, you don't use so much remedial actions for provision of the cross-zonal capacity. And okay, generally you use much less of the redispatching. Okay, it is something incidental, not the general usage. So you don't need to consider that. And one of the consequences of the emergency or the blackout state is that the remedial actions that are usually available are not available, and we will need to deal without them. So that's the need for the national approach comes from not fully, but mostly due to these conditions. We have different system conditions, so there are some needs, so there are some differences. There is much less harmonization in the balancing market. I need to say that I'm not expert on the balancing market, but I'm surprised how to perform the system restoration according to the terms and conditions for balancing that are with the requirements set in the balancing guidelines. For example, the possibilities of aggregations for some providers, but if they are able, if these TSOs are able to do it, then it's good for them. So this divergence is of the necessity, and when it comes to the report, we will go into the consequences of the differences, and in case there is a need to we identify the need to harmonize some approaches, or maybe not necessarily harmonize, make the different approaches compliant, we will do that. When it comes to the to your first remark, the explanation why suspension of given market activity is beneficial, we won't go into each detail because we are not able to. It is the task for the national consultations. That this is it. This question needs to be asked there, and it needs to be answered there. However, because in many cases, why it is important to know. Okay, and I'm going back to your first remark. Why it is necessary to know the local regulations, because these rules already use what is written in the local regulations, for example, terms and conditions for balancing, and they try to use as much as possible from already existing, from already set up regulations. So we have this situation where we have as little as reasonable differences between operation in the normal market activities and with suspension of some market activities. We will look at the differences and at the justification why such activity is suspended when we will have the suspension of certainty that it is relevant to assess the harmonization. Okay, do we have yes?
Yeah, if I may try to be quickly, thanks a lot for these responses. At the same time, it doesn't assure me, you know, on the why. I think it's really crucial. So it should be in this report. We cannot say we don't look at the why of suspension of certain activities because that should be treated at national level. There is a European Emergency Restoration Code. There should be a European report. It's a European market. We need to understand this. Otherwise, we cannot draw lessons from this report. On the question, there was also, you also said things like there are differences between, and you give the impression that there is a logic why there are national differences because of different system conditions, hydro or wind, or different size of bidding zones. Well, and also different implementation of balancing market rules. In my view, that doesn't really matter. Of course, there are differences, but a power plant is a power plant. And the scope, the size of the problems might be different if you have a smaller zone. But also in the Nordic, there are zones of a certain size in the core region as well. And the reasons on market suspension in times of emergency, the justification should be understandable and should be very similar. There is no reason why this would be different in a country like Norway or Sweden compared to Germany or Netherlands. So I really hope that these things are tackled in this report. And then on the last question was on the interventions. Naya, okay. Yeah, it seems to me that you say very often you say something, yes, but then it will be better if we do this, and then it could be that we do this. I wonder who is we? No, are you, because apparently we, if you mean we TSOs in Europe or in the core region, but actually we TSOs in the core region have very different views, because the Dutch TSO simply said we will never suspend any market activity. So I think we really need to dive deeper here. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We will take your comments aboard.
Yeah, I cannot see any other comments or hand raised. So if that's the case, I think we can continue with the presentation. Yeah,
one quick, could I make a quick intervention? Just to be sure that those who are listening, that what Paul said was, of course, it was all the Nordic, as I understand, all the Nordic TSOs filed that they didn't have any changes. But what it means is that there is already a framework for how to handle suspensions effectively by not suspending markets, and it's been applied and it's been built around the case that happened in 2003 in Sweden, Denmark, where we had a prolongated about 4 hour and a big blackout. And but anyway, I'm not going to go into details. I've said it before, but it was all Nordic, and as I understand it, the Nordic NRAs have, if I'm correct, have approved that methodology. But so I think, but I'll stop here. But I think the key, I mean, you have very good questions, Paul. I think not least the first one. I think I really hope that the TSOs can take some more time to explain what really would be the benefits, what is believed to be achieved. In particular, I think what is what is to be achieved by canceling proper planning and price formation for tomorrow. If we have a blackout this morning, what will it help for the system restoration and for the market parties, generators and demand all together to really plan properly for tomorrow to help themselves and help the system if they become working in a black zone with no reference prices, no nothing, and no interaction across the borders? Will it really help? And I mean, if you can, so I think that would be interesting to see how you can elaborate on what really will be gained by such an action. But I'll stop there. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much, Ricard. I think this is already noted from our side. Yeah, so there is no more questions I can see. Oh, here one from Paul. So just last one, I guess. Could you? I think now you can.
Thank you. Yeah. Very quickly. When we speak about suspension of market activities, there's focus on balancing, there's focus on the single day-ahead coupling, but certainly on the continental side, there is also a lot of bilateral trade, and there is also forward trading, which are mentioned. I just want to mention this to keep that in mind. That, for example, if the single day-ahead market coupling for tomorrow is suspended, the bilateral trade for the next day will continue or probably should continue. So, I mean, these things need to be also taken into account. Now, and again, that is important to answer the question that Ricard was just also underlining. Why does a suspension of one market activity helps? Why does the suspension of the single day-ahead market coupling helps if at the same time bilateral trade is supposed to continue? So keep the wider market activities also into account. Not to suspend them, but to understand what you are doing. Thank you.
Okay, we have. Okay, we have a different scope of the bilateral trading. For example, you don't have in the day-ahead time frame. You don't have the cross-zonal bilateral trade. It is only within the bilateral trade in the day-ahead time frame is only within the bidding zone, and the set of the actions and set of the intervention by the TSOs need to be consistent. I'm having a bit of problem imagining situation when internal trade is allowed bilaterally, but is not allowed on the within single day ahead. But it's something. But it is a bit. It's one of the things that need to be taken into account by the TSOs submitting the rules for the suspension of the market activities.
Okay, I think we can move on with the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next part of the thank you very much for the questions. The next part of the presentation is about the report that we have to we as as ENTSO-E have to provide, the report on the harmonization of rules for suspension and restoration of market activities. Okay, this requirement is set in the Article 36, paragraph 7, that till end of this year, ENTSO-E has to submit to agency the report assessing the level of harmonizations and identified as appropriate areas that require harmonization. And in order to prepare this report, each TSO has to provide necessary data to ENTSO-E till 18th of June this year. There was a mistake in the original text. There is corrigendum that changes the paragraph 8. The process that was envisioned was that we selected 5 TSOs that were to translate to English the rules. Initially, we wanted to do that by end of September last year. There were not so many approved rules in the September, so we extended this deadline as possible till end of the October. We looked at these rules to identify the content. We decided that the proper way to gather the information will be survey for the TSOs to answer. We are in process of doing that, and part of this is involving the stakeholders in the process. It's the reason we are here. When we finalize the survey, we will send this survey to the TSOs. When we get the response, we should get them by the mid of June this year. We will start drafting the report. We will involve stakeholders in the work. We will see how it will be done, taking into account the situation, and we plan to submit the report within the legal deadline. It means till 18th December this year. Currently, we have quite a lot of approved rules. We have still many member states where the rules are not approved. Ireland, Great Britain, Iberia Peninsula, Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Denmark, Baltics, Romania, Greece. It will be a challenge how to take into account the rules that are not approved, but we will do our best to deal with that. And now, what will we ask? We will start with some background information. The first question is whether given TSO intends to use the possibilities given by the Article 35. It means suspend the market activities. There will be the second question: if they don't, if they don't want to use these possibilities, how they are going to use the or not to use the local legislation to achieve the similar results. We will have the question: how many times the actions equivalent to market suspension, market activity suspension were done so far. We will check for the different approaches for the different for the neighboring TSOs, whether it creates the problems. If somebody is using the local legislation, which is not subject to check for the harmonization. Then we will ask questions about these four cases defined in the paragraph 1 of Article 35, whether in given cases the TSOs want to have the possibility to suspend market activities, and if yes, how the parameters to identify such situation are defined. So we have this question for the blackout state, for the emergency state, for the restoration process, and for the case of unavailability of tools and or communication means. Then we have a list of the activities identified so far, and where we ask the TSOs whether they foresee the need to suspend this activity, what would be the lead time to suspend this activity. Yeah, we have the long list of such questions. We will have also the question how the activities for suspension are selected, and this is the time for the second session of the questions and answers.
So we have a question from Rodrigo Escobar asking, I don't know if Rodrigo, let me see which of, because I have here you double. I will try to unmute you one of them. Hi, Rodrigo.
Yes, hello, sorry. This is Raquel on behalf of Rodrigo that he had to be in another meeting just now.
Okay, so, and you were asking about the 5 TSOs.
Yeah, I would like to know which were the 5 selected TSOs. And I guess the selection was done as well because there were not all the countries all the TSOs that submitted the rules, if I did understood correctly. So I think there were not so many TSOs to select between.
Sorry, could you repeat?
Yes, well, no, the basic question is is it possible to know which were the 5 selected TSOs?
Okay, it was PSC from Poland, RTE from France, it
Chaps.
was APG, yes, Chaps, and Chaps from Slovakia.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about the structure and the content of, the structure of the questions of this survey? Yeah, I think Paul has one, so let me give that to you. I think you are set.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, super. Thank you. Yeah, on the survey, very briefly, I really think you should ask the TSOs also again on the why. Mm-hmm. Why suspension of a certain market activity should be beneficial. As if that we have raised this several times, also in the MESC, it's also in the MESC minutes, we have wrote a paper on that. And yeah, we have also asked ENTSO-E at some stage to have an informal meeting, which was before summer, last summer, which was denied because it was not necessary, which is okay. But if then in the end now, and there is nothing on this item that we have brought so often, yeah, but okay. So I'm a little bit disappointed, to be honest, but okay, let's be optimistic. And I really would like to ask you to include it. And if not, if you have any doubts, please contact me, contact us. We have discussed it before, but it's so crucial. And we had the discussion on OTC trade. The answer was that, yeah, but that is limited to internal trade. Yeah, but of course the internal trade will continue. So what is the difference? The only difference is cross-border trade. If that is the problem, then we are talking about the calculation of cross-border capacity, which can be done, and you can, for any reason, reduce cross-border capacity if you have a good reason. But there is then no reason to suspend single day at a market coupling. Just as an illustration, we don't need to discuss these examples, but I hope to illustrate that the why of suspension of a certain market activity is very questionable. So this should be added. I really hope so.
Okay, let's. Basically, when we ask the question to explain why given activity needs to be suspended, then the survey is not approach that we will be able to process. We will go with some other alternative approach.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's not about the survey, it's about the topic.
Okay, thank you. Also, Michael from the Federation of Belgian and Consumer Industry. Let me see if I can find you. Yes, you should have a question. Hello, Michael.
Yes.
Once again.
Yeah, hi. You hear me? Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
The question is a bit, who do you want to answer the survey? Because if these are not approved, I mean, what can be said. So I don't see how the survey can be of help here.
Okay, the survey will allow us to gather the information about the activities that are suspended and other parameters that are set are set up in the
But who do you want it to fill in? I mean, the TSO or the NRA, or who? Because if rules are not approved, how can you, I mean, give a meaningful answer?
That's why I said it will be challenge. However, no matter what approach we take, we will have this challenge as we have the deadline to provide this report, and not all the rules are approved. And there is still significant number of unapproved rules, and it will be the challenge that we need somehow to deal with.
Okay. I understand the challenge, but I hope then that in the end the report will. I mean, if the input data is not good, then the outputs of the report will also not be good. So, yeah, I mean, I understand your challenge, but it's just I try to see what meaningful we can get out of it in the end. But okay, I understand the challenge.
Thank you, Michael. Last one for Paul, if I don't see anybody else. Paul, can you unmute yourself, please?
No, sorry, I don't have a question.
Okay, sorry, then I see your hand raised. Then I cannot see any other question or hand raised. I can with this slide. I don't know. Well, if you have, apart from that, we have already comment and provide within this webinar. There is already positions from Electric, Nord Pool, and EFET on this, and they are noted. But in case you have any further on question or suggestion for this topic, please email me as described there. So just be clear that your request or your email is concerning this work and the name of the company. I mean, of course, or the association you are representing, and the deadline for that should be by 10th of April, which it's already a couple of weeks ahead, so that you can still have some time to internally discuss and have time to digest the explanations right here, and also come up with new comments or suggestions to this work. Nothing more from my side.
Okay, in such case, I would like to thank you for the attendance and your comments. We will take it into account preparing the report. And thank you, Gonzalo, for organizing this webinar.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your engagement with this webinar. And hope you stay safe in these troubled times.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
You too, bye.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.